Her Excellency Mrs. Marie-Louise President of the Republic of Malta. Her Excellency Mrs. Alena Kupchina, President of the 17th General Conference. Excellencies, Ministers and Ambassadors, Honorable guests, Director General of UNIDO, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored to introduce these high-level discussions on World Women Leaders Talk. Excellencies, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, good news is the world has made the most spectacular advances in science and technology in the past few decades. Not so good news is statistics have shown that the gaps have been constantly widening in wealth and income between and within countries. Inequality may be one of the great challenges to global development. It matters in all countries, both in the developing and the developed world. Equally worrying are the differences among countries. Unequal roles and treatment of women and men are another phase of inequality. Such inequalities can undermine economic growth and social cohesion. Through the Agenda 2030, the world leaders have committed to mobilize efforts to end all forms of poverty, fight inequalities, and tackle climate change while ensuring no one is left behind. In her keynote speech at the World of Work Summit in June 2017, Her Excellency the President of Malta, drawing attention on some of the global goals, said, I quote, "Addressing global inequity and injustice is our first and most urgent concern. For this reason, Sustainable Development Goal 1 focuses our attention on poverty eradication," end quote. She also said, I quote again, "Agenda 2030 is a pathway to help us hold ourselves, our authorities, and our nations accountable to the most essential socio-economic issues," end quote. Indeed, a stronger commitment to partnerships and cooperation is needed to achieve sustainable development goals. It will require, among others, coherent policies, an enabling environment, and to use your own words, Madam President, it will also require genuine and sustainable investment, especially in Africa. It is our great honor to have with us today the President of the Republic of Malta. Her Excellency Mrs. Marie-Louise Preca has dedicated her life to the social well-being of the most vulnerable in society. She has driven a number of key reforms and was influential for effective changes in the social policies of Malta. Thank you, Madam President, for being here. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, leaving no one behind is at the heart of UNIDO's mandate of inclusive and sustainable industrial development, ISID, as adopted by our member state in 2013 in Lima. The Director General of UNIDO said, I quote, "Poverty is still the central challenge of our world. We now have the means to eradicate poverty within the next generation." Mr. Lee Young is also called Mr. Industry. He is our champion of inclusive and sustainable industrial development and also our gender champion. Thank you, DG, for joining this panel. Indeed, industrial development in an inclusive and sustainable manner contributes to economic growth and shared prosperity. Economic growth and shared prosperity mean more children in school, the future, more jobs for young people, a ticking bomb, especially for Africa, more opportunities for women, half of the talent of the world, and also better use of resources and environment protection, our legacy for future generations, which altogether is the foundation of peaceful and harmonious societies. Ladies and gentlemen, Her Excellency Mrs. Alena Kupchina, Permanent Representative of Belarus to UNIDO and President of the 17th General Conference, with her extensive diplomatic experience and her knowledge of humanitarian, ecological and scientific cooperation, is well placed to talk about inclusiveness and sustainability. The shared theme of inclusiveness also brings in today's moderator, Mrs. Zainab Badawi, a well-known journalist at BBC. Zainab is also a founder and chair of the Africa Medical Partnership Fund, a charity aims to help local medical professionals in Africa. Under her guidance, the panelists will highlight the importance of industrial development for an inclusive and sustainable future for our world, a world of choices for future generations. SDG Goal 17 says that global partnership is critical for the success of the SDGs. To conclude, I would like to add that multilateralism is also essential, and a strong political leadership is crucial. Thank you. Zainab, over to you.
Thank you so much indeed, Fatou. Thank you very much indeed, Fatou. Yeah. Thank you for that introduction. Good afternoon, Madam President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It is my great pleasure to be presiding over this conversation, Women's Talk, World Leaders, Women Talk, and of course we have our honorary woman, so to speak, at the moment. The Director General, of course, is with us. But what we want to really talk about in this session is you know, we all know about the importance of industrialization as a cornerstone of development. You can't do very much unless you've got industrialization. But, you know, you've got to have the political will in order to achieve the goals that we all support. And we're going to have a good chat about this, unlike Britain, which I left this morning, and there was the British government about to launch its white paper on Britain's new industrial strategy, and then the news of the engagement of Prince Harry to the American actress Meghan Markle has overshadowed that entire strategy, at least for today. But we're not going to let anything overcome our conversations today, so we're going to talk about industrialization. Madam President, you know, often when we talk about industrialization, people sometimes think it's synonymous with manufacturing, but, you know, factories and that kind of thing. But industrialization is much, much more than that. It's about modernizing your economy, making the best of your resources, including modernizing your service sector and so on and so forth. Would you agree with that?
I do agree with that. And modernizing infrastructure needs also the building of the capability of human resource. So education is very key also to industrialization and to the successful industrialization of a country. But industrialization, yes, one would probably think of long production lines and huge and massive amount of people under one roof. But industrialization in today's world means much more than that. It's ICT, for example, it's tourism and hospitality. And I think I was speaking during the General Conference, the opening ceremony of the General Conference, about Africa, and maybe because I come from the Mediterranean, and Malta is also part of the European Union, so we are Euro-Mediterraneans, and the connection with Africa is there. It's not just migration, as might think. It has been there historically. So I speak
You're not just talking about North Africa, which
no, I'm speaking of the continent.
The whole continent. Terrific.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I do think that the issue of African industrialization, we need to see it from an African vision, from an African point of view. It's not something which, that's why dialogue is very important. That's why conferences and the initiatives that UNIDO takes are very important. That's why also this EU-Africa summit that will be held later on this week in the Ivory Coast is very, very important for this dialogue, so that African leaders will have the opportunity to sensitize everybody of the needs. But if one really thinks of what, for example, Africa, what can be done there, as I see it, and maybe I don't want to sound presumptuous, but if there is anything which Africa or the whole continent can really boast of, is its climate. One would say, but what about climate change? But it's the sun which one can develop. How can we develop the sun? We take into solar energy. For example, I do dream of the Sahara Desert, such a huge, massive land,
Of course.
which today is only the symmetry of so many migrants that end up in horrendous situations and are left literally in the desert, because many a time we only speak of the people drowning in the Mediterranean Sea. We never speak of what is happening in the Sahara Desert with the crossing of migrants there. I'm speaking of this because giving a voice to the many migrants I have who have shared narratives with me of this horrendous experience. And the hideout of smugglers and traffickers, it could be developed into a powerhouse for Africa.
And so industrialization, in your view, is absolutely key to delivering some kind of prosperity to the people of the continent.
The continent itself, all the countries in Africa have so beautiful. It's so beautiful.
Do you know, I was born in Africa, so I totally agree with you, Madam President.
I haven't been to all of Africa, but I've been to quite a number of countries in Africa, and everywhere I go, it's the characteristics, the beautiful scenery and everything. I mean, it could be a wonderful hospitality place where tourism can really grow. And tourism, again, it's not just an economic driver. It is also a social driver. It brings people together.
So do you think, sorry to interrupt you, do you think that when people talk about industrialization, there is a tendency to forget the service sector, including tourism, for instance, and of course Malta relies a great deal on tourism for as part of its GDP. Do you think, and I think you actually also, when you were in opposition, had the tourism portfolio, amongst others, so you know what you're talking about here. Well, you know about many things, but do you think that there should be more emphasis on the service sector when we're talking about industrialization?
Well, I would say including the service sector, and because we started off, what do we mean by industrialization? It's not just manufacture, but there is the services industry, hospitality industry, this renewable energy. I really think this, the more I think of it, I'm not technical and I'm not a scientist, but I know what the sun is. For example, Malta has been conducting programs and schemes, creating schemes so that people will indulge into solar energy in their domestic solar energy. So if it can be done for a house, it can be done for a whole continent.
Exploit your natural resources on that path.
This is eternal. This is not like fossil fuel that within years, decades, it can end. But the sun will never end. So it is really a sustainable source. We will address CO2 emissions, but also we could create millions of green jobs for the young people of Africa.
And that's what we mean by sustainable and inclusive industrialization. Director General Lee Yong, so Madam President there has wrapped up quite a few things for us. But let's just pick up this issue where she says, you know, you've got to use your comparative advantage, that when she said Africans have got to industrialise in a way that meets their own blueprint, that you can't just come and impose it. This issue for UNIDO is a critical one, isn't it? Country ownership, regional ownership of an industrialisation policy.
Yes, I fully agree with you. We support the countries, especially we created a PCP, Program for Country Partnership. Most importantly, ownership is country. We cannot say that it's a UNIDO program. It's a country program. And this program should cover inclusiveness and sustainability. Those are two most important features, as Madam President already mentioned. Inclusiveness actually covering the very important concept, let everyone receive the opportunity to work to become entrepreneurs. And most importantly, my friend, is sharing prosperity fairly. So either women or men, they could have opportunity to do the job, to do the work, to do the business. At the same time, they share the benefits from this industrial process. So that is why we strongly promote that. Women is one of the important issues.
I'll just come, because obviously from your own experience from China, you were Vice Minister of Finance when you were there, amongst other things that you did. This issue of delivering jobs is a critical one, isn't it? And China found that that was absolutely important when it came to transforming its economic agenda. You've got to deliver jobs for men and women, particularly the youth.
Of course, when I at a primary school and elementary school, maybe a little bit higher, and I learned women hold half of the sky. That is a saying, and women need to be treated equally among the people.
Can we give him a round of applause for that? Yeah, just to reiterate, you know.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Director General. Thank you. Yes.
I'm very happy, actually, in my job as a government official, civil servant. I was in charge of the poverty reduction. I supported the microcredit for women, only for women in the remote areas. 3 provinces in the northern west part. And I'm very happy around 5 million women receive this microcredit. And also I was in charge of 3 departments in the Ministry of Finance. It was very interesting. 3 heads of department, all women, all ladies.
Did you appoint them?
I have some say.
Oh, very good.
Yeah. But also one of them become minister level. You could see the women, they have a big potential. Another one, I just add one. It is very interesting phenomena in China. And now the more and more graduate from the universities, when we hire the civil servant, they pass the examination. But look at the big majority, women. 85%, 80% women. They are excellent. So when they become the civil servants, and they, of course, start from basics, junior staff, and then they grow. And so in the future time, maybe 10 or 20 years, they become women leaders. Yeah, this is a very good. And also another information, final information.
No, it's fine, please.
I was very happy to learn that around the world, statistics by Western magazine, and it says in China, the women CEOs, more than 50%.
Really?
Of entrepreneurs, and the largest percentage in the world. To my surprise, I never know that.
So I think you need to change that Chinese proverb to say that women hold up more than half of the sky.
I fully support
Mr. Director General.
But I myself also,
over China, yes.
Myself also strongly supported by my wife. She sacrificed her career. She got a master's degree in library information science, and she contributed a lot to the librarian's career, but she gave up the job to support me.
So you feel an extra
of course,
responsibility to promote.
Yeah, without my wife, I couldn't be here handling this important job.
Yes. So, Alina Kupchina, I think what the Director General has just really illustrated quite powerfully there through his personal anecdotes, his experience in China, and also what he's brought here to UNIDO, is this guiding principle that you have to have leadership at the official and political level. You know, when he was Vice Minister of Finance in China, the women in his departments and so on, all working in order to deliver an agenda which promotes women within this industrialization conversation that we're having, the drive. You've got to have that leadership. And I know that in your career as one of the most prominent women in your native Belarus, you were a very senior diplomat and, of course, as we know now, president of the General Conference now. You would agree with the need for political leadership.
Yes, of course. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to note with distinguished panelists and all participants of this discussion that every process, including, of course, industrial development, if we want it to be inclusive and sustainable, you cannot achieve it without women. So, because we women, we understand the value of life. We are given life. Then we are caring about future. We are like in family. We are prepared to reconcile different positions for the sake of consensus and development. This is why, of course, the topic of gender balance, gender equality, gender perspective is so crucial still for the majority countries, or for all countries in the world, and of course for the United Nations system. And I am very much appreciative that this topic is so much high on the agenda of our organization, UNIDO, and that our Director General is a gender champion.
That's excellent. I'm going to come back to Madam President, because I know that you have a plane to catch and you won't be able to stay with us for the entirety of this conversation. I mean, on the issue of political leadership, you've had such a long career in politics in Malta, 40 years. I was trying to work that out, but you started as a teenager, basically.
Yes.
And, you know, you demonstrate a lot of, you know, first, you were the first Secretary General of the Labour Party in Malta. You were the second female president. You've had various portfolios, particularly in social affairs and so on. So this whole issue of political leadership and seizing an agenda and delivering it is an absolutely critical one when we're talking about industrialization. What's your experience been?
It is very important. We cannot have sustainability without women being involved completely. We need to be in numbers, however, in leadership. For example, let me take us a bit away from industrialization, but it is also interlinked. One thing which I find astonishing is with regards to, for example, women negotiators, or rather women around the peace tables. They are at a minimum. So this is one of the things which I have spoken to the President of the General Assembly this morning, that we need more women around the peace tables. I believe in this because we need to have sustainable peace. It is not enough to have the authorities signing a peace treaty. We need to build peace from the communities. And I do believe that women are the soul of our communities, together with men, but women are absent completely. If we really are for sustainable peace and hence sustainable development, industrialization, we need women to be there. And to be there essentially also to bring the communities together. So women leadership is very essential, not simply at the top echelons of our organizations, but also in our communities.
So are you saying that there's a bit of a disconnect between the kind of pledges and commitments and, you know, agendas that are set at the international level and at certain gatherings and what actually happens on a national level?
Yes, there are gaps, undoubtedly. And if we look at women parliamentarians in the world, we are 22%. If we look at women and female heads of state, there are only 11 of us.
You were talking of Africa. Rwanda has the best record, I think, globally in terms of women members of parliament.
But I'm
more than 50%.
speaking of an average. Yes, Rwanda is one of the exceptions, but we cannot look at the exception to be comfortable. We need to look at everywhere. So we need, I mean, this is on political level.
Sure.
But then there are other levels that need, levels of society. We need to have women in numbers everywhere, at all levels of our society.
And before you go, I want to ask you, because obviously we're here at this UNIDO General Conference talking about, you know, partnering for impact to achieve the SDGs, in particular SDG 9. what practical steps do you think that countries should take to support UNIDO and, providing them with the political commitment that the organisation needs?
First of all, I do believe that there are quite a number of initiatives that are being taken. But as I see it, it looks a bit fragmented. We need UNIDO to be a coordinator, even of other initiatives that are being taken, because we need to map out what is actually being done, so that then we can see where are the grey areas and put more trust and more endeavours in those grey areas. I believe that fragmented initiatives will not bring about the outcomes that we really need and to meet the objectives of Agenda 2030. So I see UNIDO as being and the international organization that coordinates, that brings together these collaborations, and that's why this morning I also appeal to the international community so that they collaborate with UNIDO and also keep the basis of Agenda 2030 as their fundamental sort of pathway to achieve sustainable development.
So the SDGs have given a framework. Final word, yes, of course, before the President.
Thank you, Madam President. I really believe that there's traditionally women actually being looked down upon in a biased attitude. This is a long-term issue. Yeah, but now I believe that I strongly believe that women can do lots of great things, like President yourself, and coming to support our General Conference. It's not just a conference; it's an activity to support economic development for our member states. And during the meeting, I really received lots of very encouraging points, like you mentioned, Africa industrialization. Now you give us a suggestion to be a good coordinator among the member states. Your message about energy, renewable energy, solar energy, your message about the tourism, your message about the women empowerment. I believe that leaders like you really leading the global momentum for socio-economic development. I appreciate your support, your coming.
Thank you. Would you please join us in thanking Madam President of Malta, and we wish you all the well, all the best. You to the stage. Thank you.